Hey everyone, and welcome to your carrier update presented by PowerFleet. So volumes running right in line with what we saw last year at this point in time. We were running about a 92.31 on the OTVI this time tomorrow and 93.60 today. So a little bit of discrepancy, but we are expecting the volumes to continue to be right in line with last year's levels to this point because we see no reason to think otherwise. Effectively. So let's check out what's going on in the United States in terms of capacity changes week over week. So we've got our weighted rejection index pulled up here. Anything in blue is going to be something with a tightening capacity versus the last 7 days. So in these blue markets here, you get a call for a spot rate. You need to keep your rates a little bit higher or just maintain your ground. Stay on your ground in these blue markets here because that means that you're going to have a value above zero. Most of the values right now are running slightly above zero to about a 5, which means that the market itself is not necessarily going haywire at any given point in the country. The biggest change week over week in the weighted rejection index is going to be the Rock Island market at a 4.6, not a high value. If you've noticed, if you've paid attention, you'll know that I don't really think anything's too significant unless it breaks that 5-point barrier, especially in some of these larger markets who can get over the 5 area. But Rock Island, not necessarily a huge market, about 0.86% of the total outbound volume in the United States right now, so about a mid-sized market. Some of these other markets to note, Detroit continues to show a wide range of volatility as volumes fluctuate wildly, especially after the GM strike comes out. They're really rushing to ramp up production in that area. A lot of automotive parts coming into that area and out of that area as they move between plants. 1.53% of a total market share value, so that is a pretty decent sized market in Detroit. However, it does run quite a bit of a deficit in terms of trucking supply. So looking at some of these other markets out here, Portland, Oregon, really the only blue market in the Northwest, which the Northwest has been one of the stronger sections of the country this winter. Seeing a lot of blues up here, a lot in the Spokane, Pendleton markets, Twin Falls, actually going red this week versus last week. So it's finally starting to settle down except for parts of the Portland market. So let's look at some of the calmer markets, if you will. So anything that's kind of starting to loosen up over the last 7 days, I should say, is going to be the Stockton market, Minneapolis, Twin Falls, Idaho, Pendleton, just like I mentioned before, and then down here the San Francisco market itself. So Stockton and San Francisco, of course, two of the more backhaul markets in the country. You don't necessarily see a lot of freight coming out of there in relation to the amount of freight going in. So it's not necessarily a huge surprise, but it is getting a lot looser here over the last 7 days. Minneapolis, Minnesota has been a huge market over the last winter, I should say, not necessarily just the last week or so, but it's finally starting to come back down off of its high levels that we saw. So overall, let's dive into the Rock Island market. You can see here, van tender rejection rates are starting to really pick up. A 20.23% van tender rejection rate. Reefer, not really a factor in this market in terms of overall capacity or tightening or loosening. So if you are a carrier operating in the Rock Island area, which is going to be that tight Davenport little section of Iowa and Illinois right there, you're going to have a lot more opportunities on the spot market here over the next few days, especially on the van side, not necessarily on the reefer side. Most length of hauls, except for the local length of hauls, tender rejections are starting to come up. Local length of haul, of course, diminishing here over the last little bit. So that's probably good news for any carriers operating in this market because that local tender rejection rate, not necessarily a good sign that you're going to continue increased utilization. So Stockton, California, as I said, the market that is softening the most over the last 7 days, falling off a cliff here over the last little bit. It had been operating at a pretty elevated range of tender rejection, at least relative to itself, bouncing up over 10% in the last couple of weeks or so. So that is a pretty significant change in this market overall. So Stockton, stay away from it even more so than normal. And that'll do it for today's carrier update.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from PowerFleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with PowerFleet.